Hello, welcome to the second part of the introduction to cells. So in this video, we are going to focus more solely on the characteristics of cells and what they have in common and what they don't have in common. So this is still section 1 of chapter 3. It's just the second part of it. After this video, you should be able to identify the parts that all cells have in common, and then compare and contrast those between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So diving right into the information. Parts of a cell that you should know that are similar or in common with all cells include the plasma membrane, the cytoplasm, ribosomes, and DNA. So all 4 of these things are found in cells, no matter what type of cell it is. So to break things down a little bit, the plasma membrane, you will also hear me call it the cell membrane. It's a thin coat of lipids that surround a cell. Remember, it is made of lipids because it does not allow water or anything to pass unless it needs to pass. So it's almost like that security gate. It forms the physical boundary between the cell and its environment. So you can actually almost think of it as like the skin of a cell. So our skin separates the inside of our body from the outside. It's a similar concept. The cytoplasm, it refers to all of the cellular material inside the plasma membrane. Cytoplasm is made up of a watery substance called cytosol, and this contains other cell structures such as the ribosomes. So your cytoplasm, it's almost like a gel-like structure. Your ribosomes are structures in the cytoplasm where proteins are made. DNA is a nucleic acid, where this contains your genetic instructions or genetic information that all cells need to make proteins. Remember, proteins are your workers. So the proteins are going to do all of the jobs that are sent down from the DNA, which is the boss. And those proteins are made by ribosomes. So again, all 4 of these things are common parts of a cell. It does not matter what type of cell. These are things that I would expect you to know. Very good test question here, or quiz question. So we will start talking about 2 types of cells, but before we can do that, we need to know some basic information on what determines a prokaryotic cell compared to a eukaryotic cell. So in order for most living things to be living or to have a good cellular structure, you have what's known as a nucleus. Okay, and a nucleus is the place where DNA is held. So the nucleus is almost like the power or the control center, if you will. You can think of it as that. It holds the DNA. Remember, the DNA has the instructions for everything that's made in your body. So the nucleus is present in many, but not all living things. So some living things can survive without the nucleus, not essential. The nucleus, again, structure in the cytoplasm that is surrounded by a membrane and contains DNA. Based on if you have a nucleus determines the type of cell you are. So the presence of a nucleus determines if you're a prokaryote or a eukaryote. When we get into specifics, remember I just talked about in the previous slide, the presence of a nucleus determines if you're a prokaryote or a eukaryote. Prokaryotes or prokaryotic cells are cells without a nucleus. They do not have anything that houses their DNA. It's almost like their DNA is just hanging out in the cytoplasm. Okay? So rather than it enclosed in a nuclear membrane and that surrounding, it's just found within that cytoplasm. Prokaryotic cells are found in single-celled organisms, such as bacteria. We will do some labeling of different types of cells, so prokaryotic and eukaryotic. So don't feel overwhelmed if you're not being able to visualize this just yet. I will give you some pictures. Organisms with prokaryotic cells are called prokaryotes. So these were the very first type of organisms to evolve and are still the most common organism today. They are very successful, obviously, because they are millions of years old and they still live today. So very successful species. We are ancient ancestors of a prokaryote. We all started out as one cell, and then over time in evolution, we have evolved and evolved and evolved to evolve to our surroundings, and we are now a huge multicellular organism. So let's talk about organisms or cells that have a nucleus and that house a DNA in the nucleus. These are known as eukaryotic cells. Cells that contain a nucleus. These are usually larger than your prokaryotic cells, and they're found mainly in multicellular organisms. So humans, animals, fungi, anything like that. These are your eukaryotic. You're more likely to encounter a eukaryotic cell than you are. I should say you're more likely to see a eukaryotic multicellular organism rather than a prokaryotic. Because remember, your prokaryotes or your unicellular, they're super tiny, very, very incredibly hard to see. One of the examples is, like I said, bacteria and archaea. And these range from fungi to humans. Can you think of any other examples of eukaryotic cells? Another special factor about eukaryotic cells that I didn't actually put on here, which I will have you add to your notes, is the fact that eukaryotic cells contain organelles within the cell besides the nucleus. So an organelle is a structure within the cytoplasm that performs a specific job in the cell. Organelles called mitochondria, for example, provide energy to the cell, and organelles such as the vacuoles store substances in the cell. Organelles allow eukaryotic cells to carry out more functions than prokaryotic cells can. So, for example, our eukaryotic cells, they have the ability to divide and multiply and pass on genetic material in a much more diverse way than prokaryotic cells. And another question, and I've asked you this at the beginning of the year, is a virus alive? So based off of this information I'm giving you, are viruses considered living? I want you to think about that. If you have any questions, please, please, please ask me on Edpuzzle, ask me in class, ask me whenever.